There is a region in western Germany, between the rivers Ruhr and Sieg, where the hills are dense with forest and the valleys are threaded with fast-running streams. The land is called the Bergisches Land. It sits just east of the Rhine, in the state of North Rhine-Westphalia, and it contains 3 cities that most people outside the trades have never heard of: Remscheid, Solingen, Wuppertal. If you work with your hands for a living, those names mean something, because within that triangle, spread across a landscape no larger than a mid-sized American county, more high-precision hand tools have been forged, ground, hardened, and shipped to the world than from any other region on Earth. Solingen makes blades. It has been making blades since the 14th century. Remscheid makes tools. It has been making tools since the 16th. Wuppertal makes everything in between. The water powered the forges. The iron came from the Siegerland to the south. The charcoal came from the forests that covered the hills. And the people who lived in those valleys did what people do when the raw materials are under their feet, and the rivers can turn a grinding wheel. They built things. They built them well. And they kept building them for 500 years. This is the story of 9 German companies that emerged from that tradition, and the culture that made them possible. Most of them are still family-owned. Most of them still manufacture in Germany. None of them were acquired by private equity firms, stripped for parts, and relocated to a country with cheaper labour. None of them were merged into conglomerates and managed by people who had never held the tools they sold. And every single one of them is considered, by the professionals who use their tools 8 hours a day, to be among the finest in the world. This is not a ranking. It is an explanation. Because the question is not which German tool brand is the best. The question is why so many of the best tool brands in the world happen to be German. Before the companies, there was the system. Germany did not produce world-class tools by accident. It produced them through a structure that has no equivalent in the English-speaking world. The first element is the Meisterbrief, the Master Craftsman Certificate. In Germany, to call yourself a master plumber, a master electrician, a master carpenter, or a master toolmaker, you must complete a formal apprenticeship of 3 to 4 years, work as a journeyman, and then pass a rigorous examination administered by the Handwerks Kammer, the Chamber of Skilled Trades. The system dates to the medieval guild structure, and it was never dismantled. It was modernized, formalized into law, and preserved as a national institution. A Meister is not a marketing title. It is a legally protected professional qualification that requires thousands of hours of supervised training before you are permitted to operate independently. The second element is the Mittelstand. The word translates loosely as middle estate, but it describes something specific. A Mittelstand company is typically family-owned, privately held, regionally rooted, and obsessively focused on a narrow product category. It does not chase quarterly earnings. It does not answer to institutional shareholders. It reinvests its profits into engineering, tooling and workforce development, decade after decade, generation after generation. The Mittelstand is the backbone of the German industrial economy. It accounts for roughly 60% of all private sector employment in Germany and produces a disproportionate share of the country's exports. The third element is the dual education system. German apprentices split their time between vocational school and the factory floor. They learn metallurgy, materials science, and production engineering alongside experienced machinists who have been making tools for 20 or 30 years. The knowledge transfers directly. The skills are not theoretical. A 20-year-old who has completed a German toolmaking apprenticeship can read a micrometer, operate a CNC lathe, and heat-treat chromium vanadium steel to a specific Rockwell hardness. They learned it by doing it, under supervision, for years. In the Bergisches Land alone, roughly 300 companies still operate in the tool industry, employing around 7,000 people. That is not a statistic from the 19th century. That is today. These are not heritage businesses preserved as museum pieces. They are active manufacturers competing in global markets, producing tools that are exported to every industrialized nation on Earth. The infrastructure that supported them, the technical schools, the testing laboratories, the specialty steel suppliers, the logistics networks, still functions. The ecosystem is intact. These 3 systems, the Meisterbrief, the Mittelstand, and the dual education structure, created the conditions for an entire ecosystem of tool companies to emerge, survive, and dominate. The companies did not build the culture. The culture built the companies. In 1868, in the city of Remscheid, a 27-year-old blacksmith named Herman Zerver set up a forge in the basement of his house. He made plane irons, saw setters, hinges, and ball locks. His wife and children lived upstairs. The forge was downstairs. He had an anvil, a set of bellows, and a few striking tools. By 1874, he had moved to a larger premises. By the early 1900s, his company employed dozens of workers. The brand name came from the German pronunciation of his initials. H became Ha, Z became Zet. The company was called Hazet. Herman Zerver died in 1906. His sons took over. During the First World War, the factory was redirected to produce military equipment. After the war, Hazet returned to hand tools and began exporting. By 1926, 50 people worked in the factory. The company began building tools specifically designed for automotive maintenance, an industry that barely existed when the founder had first lit his forge. In July 1943, Allied bombers struck Remscheid. The main Hazet plant was nearly destroyed by incendiary bombs. The company rebuilt. By the 1950s, Hazet had become so closely associated with German automotive engineering that its toolkits were included as standard equipment inside every Volkswagen Beetle and Porsche 356 that left the factory. The VW Beetle toolkit, fitted into a compartment beside the spare tire, became one of the most recognizable automotive accessories in the world. It was made by Hazet, in Remscheid, by the descendants of a blacksmith who had started in his own basement. Today, Hazet is in its fifth generation of family ownership. It manufactures over 5,500 different tools. It is the official supplier and technical partner of Porsche Motorsport. It produces specialty tools for Mercedes-Benz, BMW, Volkswagen, Audi, and MAN Truck and Bus. The forge in the basement became one of the most advanced tool production facilities in Europe. 14 years after Herman Zerver lit his first forge, another man in the same region began making tools. In 1882, Carl Gustav Putsch founded a small smithy in the Kronenberg district of Wuppertal, with one journeyman and 2 apprentices. They forged carpenters' pincers and farriers' tongs. The company grew slowly. Carl Putsch died, and his son took over. By 1927, the workshop had 27 employees producing roughly 7,000 pliers per week. The craft operation had become a small factory. The son registered a trademark. The family name was common in the region, so he chose something more distinctive. He called the brand Knipex. In 1954, the founder's grandson, Carl Putsch, assumed management. Carl was an engineer. He modernized the manufacturing processes, extended the product range, and invested in precision machinery. He and his wife Ilse, who had been with the company since 1951, drove Knipex to become the market leader in pliers across Europe. What separates Knipex from nearly every competitor on Earth is a decision the family made and never reversed. All core manufacturing takes place at the original location in Wuppertal. Every pair of pliers, every cutter, every crimping tool. The company builds many of its own production machines. It modifies purchased machines to meet its own specifications. It writes the software that controls those machines. It owns over 400 specialized production machines, refined across generations, that encode knowledge no competitor can purchase. Knipex employs roughly 1,800 people in manufacturing alone. The company produces tens of thousands of pliers every day. It exports to over 100 countries. It remains privately owned by the 4th generation of the Putsch family, led by Ralph Putsch, who joined the company in 1987. No private equity fund has ever owned a share. No conglomerate has ever absorbed the brand. No executive has ever stood in front of a board and explained why moving production to a lower-cost country would improve margins. The pliers are made in Wuppertal. They have always been made in Wuppertal. The same city produced 2 more companies that would become global forces in hand tools. Both were founded within 3 years of each other. Both started in the same Bergisches Land tradition, and both took entirely different paths to the same destination. In 1936, Herman Werner founded a trading company for tools in Wuppertal. After the war, the company began manufacturing its own screwdrivers. In 1951, combining the first letters of the founders' surnames, Werner and Amtenbrink, the company adopted the name Wera. In 1968, Wera partnered with the Fraunhofer Institute Germany's premier applied research organization, to develop the Kraftform handle. It was the first ergonomic screwdriver handle designed not as a marketing feature, but as a scientifically engineered interface between the human hand and the fastener. The handle's profile followed the natural contours of the palm. Hard zones transmitted torque. Soft zones absorbed pressure, where the hand naturally gripped. The design reduced fatigue, it increased the torque a user could apply, and it has remained fundamentally unchanged for over 50 years, because the human hand has not changed either. Wera later developed the hex plus geometry for hex keys, a contact profile that distributes force across a wider surface area inside the fastener, reducing cam out and allowing up to 20% more torque. It developed diamond-coated bit tips that grip the screw head through friction rather than downward pressure. It developed the Cyclop ratchet with a swiveling head. Every product addressed a specific, measurable problem that professionals encountered on the job. By 2016, the company's original owners retired, and Wera was acquired by Bitburger Holding, a German family investment company best known for owning one of the country's largest breweries. The acquisition did not change the company's location, its manufacturing philosophy, or its workforce. Production takes place primarily in Bystries in the Czech Republic, and at the headquarters in Wuppertal, where over 1,500 employees work across more than 3,000 different tool products. The tools were so frequently counterfeited that Wera repeatedly had to shut down trade fair stalls displaying fakes. Imitation in this case was not flattery. It was theft. 3 years after Herman Werner started his business, another man in Wuppertal did the same. In 1939, Willy Hahn founded a company to manufacture nuts and bolts. His initials gave the company its name. W for Willy, Ha for Hahn. Wiha. The factory was destroyed during the war. In 1943, the company relocated to Schonach, a small town in the Black Forest in the state of Baden-Württemberg. The move was meant to escape the bombing. It became permanent. In 1947, Wiha pivoted from fasteners to screwdrivers. The precision screwdriver line that followed became the foundation of the company's reputation. Today, Wiha is headquartered in Schonach im Schwarzwald. It is still owned and operated by the Hahn family, now in its third generation. Wiha manufactures over 3,500 different hand tools. It has been named one of the 100 most innovative companies in the German Mittelstand sector 3 times. Its insulated VDE tools, tested to withstand 1,000 volts, are used by electricians across Europe and North America. The company that started making nuts and bolts in a Wuppertal workshop during the first year of the Second World War is now a global leader in precision hand tools, still family-owned, still manufacturing in Germany, still operating from the Black Forest town where it fled the bombs 80 years ago. In the same Bergisches Land triangle, 2 more companies emerged in the same tradition. Stahlwille was founded in 1862 by Eduard Wille, also in the Kronenberg district of Wuppertal. That makes Stahlwille older than Hazet, older than Knipex, older than any of them. Eduard Wille began by manufacturing pokers and fire tongs. His sons took over in 1899 and redirected the company toward professional hand tools. The brand name combines Stahl, the German word for steel, with the family name. Stahlwille became known for torque tools. Its Manoscope series of torque wrenches, used in automotive, aerospace and industrial applications, set standards that competitors spent decades trying to match. The company pioneered controlled tightening technology, producing tools that allowed engineers to apply precisely calibrated force to fasteners in environments where over-tightening or under-tightening could result in catastrophic failure. Aircraft assembly, engine building, wind turbine construction. The margins of error in those applications are measured in fractions of a Newton meter. Stahlwille built tools accurate enough to work within those margins. The company manufactures at 3 production facilities in Germany. It exports to more than 90 countries. It remains privately held. Gedore was founded in 1919, in Remscheid, by 3 brothers. Otto, Karl and Willy Dowidat started with minimal capital, producing adjustable wrenches, iron hole punches, and other hand tools. The company name was an acronym: G for Gebruder, meaning brothers, Do for Dowidat, Re for Remscheid, Gedore. In 1926, space constraints forced a relocation to a larger facility in Remscheid-Lutringhausen. The factory grew, The product range expanded. Gedore survived the Second World War largely intact, escaping the worst of the bombing that devastated so many factories in the region. But after the war, a family dispute split the business. Otto continued under the Gedore name. Willy left in 1949 and established the separate Dowidat Werke. The split was permanent, but the Gedore operation endured. In the 1960s, Gedore began investing abroad. It opened production facilities and distribution centers in South Africa, Brazil, India, Australia, and Turkey. The strategy was not to offshore German production, but to establish regional manufacturing that could serve local markets with locally adapted products, while the core engineering remained in Remscheid. Today, the Gedore Group operates 7 production facilities worldwide. It manufactures thousands of hand tools, from combination wrenches to torque equipment to specialty industrial tools. Its Drehmaster torque wrench won the Eisen Innovation Award at the Eisenwera Messe in Cologne. The headquarters remain in Remscheid-Lüttringhausen, in the same district where the three brothers started with almost nothing over a century ago. 6 companies, all from the same region, all from the same metallurgical tradition, all still manufacturing, all still respected by the professionals who depend on them. But Germany's tool engineering culture extends far beyond the Bergisches Land. In the south, in the state of Baden-Württemberg, a different tradition emerged. Not hand tools shaped from forged steel, but power tools engineered for precision woodworking. 2 companies from this region became the standard against which every other professional power tool in the world is judged. In 1899, in the city of Fellbach near Stuttgart, a company called Maschinenfabrik Fellbach was established, Mafell. It began building woodworking machines. In 1926, Mafell manufactured the world's first portable electric carpentry power tool, a chain mortiser that allowed carpenters to cut mortise joints on the job site instead of hauling timber back to the workshop. It was a tool that changed how buildings were constructed. In 1933, Mafell relocated to Oberndorf am Neckar, in the heart of the industrial region surrounding Stuttgart. Local authorities in Fellbach had refused to approve an expansion. The mayor of Oberndorf offered land. Mafell moved and never left. The sole production facility still sits in Oberndorf, and 85% of all components used in Mafell tools are manufactured in-house. Mafell builds its own motors. It machines its own castings. It molds its own plastics. It assembles its own tools on production lines staffed by over 250 long-term employees. It does not outsource production to contract manufacturers in other countries and stamp its name on the result. In 1980, Mafell introduced the Erica, the world's first pull-push saw, a machine that could rip and crosscut with precision that stationary bench saws struggled to match. In 1990, the company moved into a purpose-built manufacturing facility in Oberndorf-Lindenhof, one of the most advanced tool production plants in Germany. In 2002, it developed the PSS 3000, the first self-propelled rail-guided portable panel saw, a system that earned the Rudolf Eberle Award for Innovation. The company employs roughly 280 people. It does not chase volume. It chases precision. A Mafell circular saw cuts within tolerances that most competitors cannot achieve with stationary equipment. The price reflects this. Mafell tools are expensive. They are expensive because they are built to standards that most manufacturers abandoned decades ago in pursuit of lower retail price points. In 1925, 6 years before Mafell's chain mortiser, another company was founded near Stuttgart. Albert Faeser and Gottlieb Stoll established Faeser and Stoll in Esslingen am Neckar. In 1927, they built the world's first portable chainsaw. The company name was shortened to Festo in 1933. For decades, Festo produced both power tools and pneumatic automation equipment. In 1992, the power tool division was separated. In 2000, it was spun off entirely as Festool. The company remains owned by the family of co-founder Gottlieb Stoll. His granddaughter, Barbara Ostel, serves as chair of the supervisory board. Festool manufactures primarily at 3 German facilities, Wendlingen, Neidlingen and Illertissen, with additional production in the Czech Republic. The Neidlingen plant has been recognized multiple times as Factory of the Year. What Festool did differently was not merely to build good power tools, it built a system. Every Festool sander, router, saw, and drill was designed to integrate with a dust extraction unit. In 1966, the company introduced the world's first sander with active dust extraction, the Rutcher. The idea was not cosmetic. Sawdust is a carcinogen. A carpenter who breathes fine wood particles for 30 years has a measurably higher risk of nasal cancer. Festool built extraction into the tool from the beginning, not as an accessory, but as a core design requirement. In 1979, it introduced the Rotex, the world's first multi-mode sander that could switch between coarse stock removal and fine finishing in the same machine. In 1980, it launched the plunge-cut saw, a tool that allowed a circular saw to enter the workpiece from above rather than from the edge, transforming how carpenters and cabinet makers handled sheet materials on site. In 2005, Festool introduced the Domino joiner, a loose mortise and tenon system that combined the structural strength of traditional mortise joints with the speed and portability of a power tool. The Domino became synonymous with the product category it created. No comparable tool existed before it. Competitors have attempted to replicate it. None have matched it. Festool tools operate within a system where every component is designed to work with every other component. The guide rails fit the saws, the dust extractors connect to the sanders, the sustainer storage cases interlock and stack. The battery platforms are cross-compatible across the range. The system was designed so that a professional who committed to it would find that every subsequent purchase extended the capability of everything they already owned. The final company in this story is unlike all the others. It does not make tools. It sells them. In 1945, in the small town of Künzelsau in Baden-Württemberg, a man named Adolf Würth founded a wholesale company for screws and nuts. It was the aftermath of the war. Germany was in ruins. Reconstruction was beginning. Every building site needed fasteners. Würth sold them. Adolf Würth died in 1954. His son Reinhold Würth took over the business at 19 years old. The company had 2 employees. Annual revenue was roughly 80,000 Deutsche Marks. Reinhold Würth did not build a tool company. He built a distribution empire. He expanded the product range from screws to fasteners to chemicals to hand tools to power tool accessories to safety equipment to workshop furniture. He built a direct sales force that visited workshops, garages, factories, and construction sites. He did not wait for customers to come to a catalogue or a warehouse. He sent salespeople to the customer. The model was simple. A Würth sales representative walked into a workshop, identified what the tradesperson needed, and delivered it. The sales force grew to thousands of representatives, each assigned a territory, each carrying a catalogue that eventually exceeded 100,000 products. Würth did not compete on price. It competed on availability, reliability, and the relationship between the salesperson and the tradesperson. If a mechanic in Stuttgart needed a specific Torx bit at 7 in the morning, Würth delivered it. By the end of the 1970s, revenues had reached 330 million Deutsche Marks. Reinhold Würth set a target of 1 billion. He reached it in the mid-1980s. The company expanded into the Netherlands, Switzerland, Austria, the United States, South Africa, Japan, and Malaysia. By the early 2000s, the Würth Group comprised over 265 companies across 80 countries. Today, the group generates over 20 billion euros in annual revenue. It employs over 87,000 people worldwide. It carries more than 100,000 different products. Würth remains a privately held family company headquartered in Künzelsau. Reinhold Würth, now in his 90s, serves as honorary chairman. His daughter Bettina chairs the advisory board. The company was never listed on a stock exchange. It was never acquired. It was never carved up by investment bankers. What Würth represents is the infrastructure that connects German engineering to the people who use it. The Knipex pliers, the Wera screwdrivers, the Hazet ratchets, the Stahlwille torque wrenches, all of them flow through distribution networks that companies like Würth built and maintained for decades. The tools are made in the factories. Würth makes sure they arrive in the hands that need them. There is a pattern in these 9 stories, and it is not complicated. It is just rare. The pattern is this. A founder starts a company. The founder's children or grandchildren take it over. The family does not sell. Private equity does not enter. A conglomerate does not absorb the brand. The headquarters do not relocate to a tax haven. The factories do not move to a country where labor costs less and regulation is weaker. The company does one thing. It does it obsessively. It invests in the people who make the product and the machines that shape it. It refines the product year after year, decade after decade, generation after generation. Carl Gustav Putsch founded Knipex in 1882. His great-grandson runs it today. Herman Zerver founded Hazet in 1868. His fifth-generation descendants run it today. Willy Hahn founded Wiha in 1939. His grandson runs it today. Gottlieb Stoll co-founded what became Festool in 1925. His granddaughter chairs the supervisory board today. In the American and British tool industries, the pattern ran differently. Stanley bought Black & Decker. Stanley Black & Decker bought DeWalt, Craftsman, Porter Cable and Irwin. TTI bought Milwaukee, Ryobi and Rigid. Apex Tool Group swallowed Crescent, Wyss and Gear Wrench. The names survived. The factories did not. The engineering was centralized, offshored, or eliminated. The tools became products. The products became line items on a conglomerate's quarterly report. The people who designed them were laid off. The people who built them were replaced by contract manufacturers on the other side of the world. The brands became logos attached to whatever a global supply chain produced at the lowest cost per unit. Germany did not do that, not because German executives are more virtuous, not because German shareholders are more patient, but because the structure of the German industrial economy, the Mittelstand, the apprenticeship system, the family ownership tradition, the legal and cultural expectation that a company is a multi-generational institution, not a financial instrument, created conditions where doing that was neither necessary nor desirable. A Knipex plier is not better than an American plier because of some mystical German quality gene. It is better because the person who forged it was trained for 4 years by someone who was trained for 4 years by someone who was trained for 4 years. Because the machine that shaped the jaw was built by the same company that uses it. Because the steel was selected by an engineer whose family has been selecting steel in the same valley for 100 years. Because no one in the decision chain had an incentive to make it worse. That is not romanticism. That is not nostalgia. That is the compounding effect of institutional knowledge, retained over time, in an economic structure that rewards long-term investment over short-term extraction. The tools coming out of Germany today are not relics. Knipex continues to develop new plier geometries that no competitor has replicated. Wera continues to patent fastening technologies that solve problems most manufacturers have not even identified. Festool continues to produce power tools that professionals describe not as equipment, but as systems. Mafell continues to engineer woodworking tools to tolerances that border on the absurd for a portable machine. These companies are not standing still. They are competing against every manufacturer on Earth, including each other, and they are winning because the system that produced them, the apprenticeships, the family ownership, the regional specialization, the obsessive focus on one product category is still intact. The Bergisches Land is still making tools. The Black Forest is still making screwdrivers. The Swabian Alb is still making power tools that arrive in wooden crates and outlast the buildings they help construct. In 1868, a young blacksmith in Remscheid lit a forge in his basement and began hammering out plane irons. In 2026, his descendants ship precision torque tools to Porsche Motorsport. The forge is different, the steel is different, the technology is different, the standard is not. The standard has never changed. If you have used a German tool and wondered why it felt different, why the action was smoother, why the finish was cleaner, why it was still working 5 years after a comparable tool from another country had failed, now you know. It was not the tool. It was the culture that made the tool. And that culture is still there, in the valleys and workshops and family-run factories of a country that decided a long time ago that making things well was not just a business strategy, it was an identity. If you own a German tool, leave a comment below, tell us the brand, the model, and how long you have had it. We have heard from tradespeople running Knipex pliers for 20 years, Hazet ratchets for 15, Festool sanders for a decade without a single repair. Those numbers are the data that no marketing campaign can fabricate. Those are the numbers that matter. Subscribe if you want to understand not just what tools are worth buying, but why. No brand deals, no sponsored placements, just the engineering, the history, and the decisions that made the tools you hold in your hands what they are. The next video in this series covers a German company most people have never heard of, a family operation in the Black Forest that builds one product so precisely that aerospace engineers specify it by name. That story is worth telling, and we are going to tell it.